Hey everyone, I am here with your forecast. I was not actually even going to do a video this week. I am personally I was going through a little bit of a discouraging moment, and my viewership on my videos is, this last week was the lowest it's ever been. And sometimes it's really hard to motivate yourself to do something when it's not actually getting the recognition that we'd like it to get. And this in turn often brings us to a deeper understanding of what drives us. And in order to get to a place of understanding that what drives us is not the reaction that we get or the response that we get, but the faith that we have that what we are doing serves some greater purpose beyond ourselves. And in order to get to that realization, sometimes we have to go through a little bit of a dark night of the soul. And that goes with all types of rejection in life. We personalize, we feel dejected, rejected, we feel temporarily emptied of value. I'd say a lot of this, if you've been feeling this in any shape or form in your own life, comes right in time for Mercury retrograde in Pisces. It gives me an indication of what the Pisces retrograde is going to be all about. As we know, Mercury, when it is in its illusory retrograde phase, Mercury being the planet of communication, and I see it really as being the alignment of thoughts and communication. As we consider ourselves channels for communication, and the blockages that we may have, the hindrances, the detours that our communication process can take as a result of obstacles, psychological or physical, can in turn manifest itself in delays, channels breaking down. I prefer to focus on that dynamic of it than the Cosmopolitan magazine version of Mercury retrograde being, that your mail is going to get lost, or your car is going to break down, or your flight's going to be delayed. Of course, those things, I guess, coincidentally could happen with Mercury retrograde, but the fact of the matter is, nobody can put their life on hold for the 6 weeks of Mercury retrograde and its shadow. That would be ludicrous. So any reader that you come across who is trying to tell you that you should avoid signing contracts and blah 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 blah, just know that fate and destiny and the power of the universe is such that if something of an opportunity comes up during a retrograde period, it is happening for a reason. It is happening because there may be something off kilter about that experience, but that is there for you to learn from and to put your tools of expansion that you have learned from previous failures or previous problems that you have resolved and moved beyond. It's the opportunity to continue putting those skills to good use. You can't do that unless you have more obstacles, basically. That's the bottom line for that. in addition to Mercury going retrograde, we also have Mars moving into Capricorn, which means that we are coming up to a period where we will have 4 major planets in Capricorn, and that's only going to continue through the rest of this year. And Mars is the warrior planet. Mars is the planet of action, of fierce, self-dominating, go-get-em kind of energy. And the way that that manifests in Capricorn, where it is in fact relatively exalted, is that we're going to find ourselves really at a juncture of wanting to stand up to injustice and to things on a personal level and a global level. But let's focus on the personal, because I am not going to pretend to be in any form of global activist organization, nor do I have the energy for that right now, because I gotta take care of me first, and that may also be a little bit of what the Mercury retrograde in Pisces is all about. It's like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your needs? But sorry to flip back to that, but I guess it's all in correlation with everything that we need to consider. Mars in Capricorn is going to be pushing us to stand our ground and to fight for the things that we deserve and that we feel that we deserve. And that means that we will not be taking any BS from the proverbial peanut gallery of idiots who constantly observe and judge. And it also means that people facing situations where there are figures who have authority over choices in our lives, those people are going to irritate the fuck out of us, and we are going to go to battle with those things. And I'm not saying that everybody who has a boss or anybody that they have to answer in their lives to in their lives is going to suddenly overturn the tables and throw things and start pulling a Norma Ray. It is more about where there are things that are unjust, in the sense that what we personally know to be our values and to be beneficial to us and to how we present ourselves to the outside world. If there is any injustice towards those parts of ourselves being fully realized, fully actualized, and fully expressed, that Mars warrior spirit is going to possess you to fight for free-flowing space for those important aspects of who you are. So, on that note, let's get into this week's energies. We have 2 spirit animal cards that came, and I actually did pull readings last night before I went to bed, but I was in a very deflated state of mind and didn't have the desire or the energy to do the reading. But the first card that came out today, because 2 came out at the same time today, was the same card that I pulled last night as the spirit animal oracle card. So there's a lot to that, and we need to focus on all the serendipity that we can right now, because these are strange in-between times that we're dealing with. So anyway, we got number 22, Dragonfly Spirit, And Dragonfly Spirit's message is that the truth transcends illusion. And the oracle message of Dragonfly Spirit is that Dragonfly Spirit is here to remind you of the wisdom and truth available at all times in the hidden realms. Just as a dragonfly catches your eye with its reflective wings and body, Dragonfly Spirit appears to tell you to pay attention to the truth beyond the illusions and recognize the insights that come seemingly out of nowhere, peeking through from behind the veil. In the realm of spirit, there is far more wisdom than you can perceive with your senses, and there is a deep knowing that you are not separate or alone, for a higher power recognizes you and loves you beyond measure. Fears dissipate as you realize you are embraced by the nurturing force that is everywhere, always in communication with you. Remember that? Fears dissipate as you realize that you are embraced by these powers. That's important to remember in this energy that we're going through. Alighting when you are preoccupied, Dragonfly Spirit offers this message. You exist in unity with all, including the protective spirits who shared their wisdom, and you are being nudged along the path your soul needs to travel in order to have the experiences it craves. Love exists in many forms, and sometimes we overlook it when we don't recognize a particular form. Pay attention to the signs now. They remind you that each of us have inspired dreams seamlessly sewn into the fabric of the invisible world, and there is a great consciousness that exists in the seemingly empty spaces guiding us on our journey. Open to the truth, letting the wisdom of the hidden realms inform you, providing insights your conscious mind overlooks. For example, and this is not the card speaking, this is me, rejection always feels like shit, but the reality is that if you are in alignment with the universe, you understand that that rejection is there because what you were going for wasn't right for you and isn't actually going to allow you to experience the right kinds of challenges in order for you to continue growing. Some situations where there's rejection, if we weren't rejected, we would find ourselves re-experiencing things that do not serve our greater purpose and that we wouldn't learn from, because we would just discover, in fact, that we were doing the same thing all over again. And while that might mean that we resolve much quicker to end that cycle of repetition, it also means that we waste a lot of time. So think about that. The protection message of Dragonfly Spirit is, did you really think this world of the senses is all there is? From the hidden mystical realms, signs are being sent to you, but perhaps you have perceived separation and convinced yourself that you are on your own. Sorry, I'm reading like a 4-year-old today because I haven't had enough caffeine and I'm getting over a sinus infection, so. Have you fallen into spiritual amnesia and forgotten your connection to a living, loving, always supportive universe? If so, rub the sleep out of your eyes. For Dragonfly Spirit is here to remind you of all the love and support available to you in every moment. There is an organizing principle underlying the events you have experienced, and Dragonfly Spirit can help you see it and trust that Spirit has your back. Let go of the illusion of chaos and randomness. Love is here, so follow the signs that appear serendipitously. As you pay attention to the magic all around you, you will know you are on the right track. So that's a pretty beautiful and self-explanatory message, I think. And then we also got, and I think we've had this once before, but maybe not actually, we got Bee Spirit, which is number 7, and Bee Spirit's message is sweet results await. The Bee Spirit's message is that sweet rewards are on their way if you are willing to get your ego out of the way and immerse yourself in the connected energy of all things. Amen. Bee spirit knows not to let a sense of being a separate self get in the way of a good thing. Spirit is always producing honey. Miracles and magic are everywhere. When you connect with the great hive, you are vibrating and buzzing in exquisite harmony with all. Bee spirit asks that your focus be on connectivity. Your body, heart, soul, and psyche experience total interconnectedness and a true integration when you self-forget, when you remember that you are a part of a greater unified consciousness. Moving from separation into connection, from self-centered limitation to spirit-centered infinite possibility and potential, you become busy as a bee enjoying the gifts of bee spirit. And I do think that that's also something that we are being challenged to experience right now. I don't know about you, but I keep sort of going in and out of connection to the outside world, and I'm acutely aware of periods of time in my life where I was so interconnected with my environment that I didn't have that much leisure time or that much time for self-reflection or escapism, for that matter. And when I say escapism, I mean solitary escapism, not going out partying. So I think there's a collective desire to stick our finger in the plug, so to speak, to get a little bit of life electricity flowing through us. Fully in alignment with your highest expression of yourself, your heart opens and creativity rushes through you, seemingly without effort, as you experience that nothing feels like work. Industriousness is driven by enthusiasm and inner motivation, and time seems to fly by quickly as the hive supports you in the making of honey. Do you feel the presence of your helpers in the hidden realms adding their energy to your creations? Magical results are taking form and will be sweeter than you expect. Bee Spirit wants you to remember that your part in the divine partnership with the conscious universe is being rewarded, even if you can't see that yet, and asks that you share your good fortune as there is plenty of honey for all. Be a part of the larger whole, the force that brings forth all that is sweet and delightful. When Bee Spirit comes as your protector, she asks you to be very honest with yourself. Do you want to taste the sweet honey others have been making, but you believe it's unattainable for you? Do you wonder how others ended up with so much magical honey when you seem to have none? Have you bought into the illusion of separation and become convinced that you can't have what others in the hive enjoy? Do you separate from the hive to do it all on your own, or to hoard what honey you have, unwilling to trust that there is plenty of support and plenty of sweetness to go around? If you have been overworking and overdoing and have not given yourself any time to enjoy the sweetness of your life, Bee Spirit is telling you to stop and recharge. Perhaps you're afraid that if you don't get something done, it just won't get done. However, even busy bees need to take a break, and when they do, the honey still gets made. So remind yourself that sweetness is everywhere and available to you always when you need it. And that's sort of like Four of Pentacles energy. It's miserly energy. It's holding on to what we have for fear of losing it, but at the expense of being able to think bigger and gain more. We actually got the Four of Pentacles in last night's reading that I abandoned, and it's not in today's reading, so that may be a sign that subconsciously we've been processing that sense of lack, and that maybe we've let go of it. And the reason I say that is because we do actually have in our past energies the Two of Swords. Now I'm going to go into the reading now, but I should explain to you that I did a Celtic cross. I did not do my usual rows of 3 because I wanted to get a more structured overview of the process of this energy right now. So going into it, our underlying energy is the Strength card. I haven't clarified these cards yet. I will do that on camera with you. Strength card. So we need that. That's what the Spirit Animal Oracle messages were all about. There's a lot about grounding ourselves in our sense of that things are right as they are, and that we carry the strength within us to face any obstacles, and that anything that we do experience that feels challenging is just part of the divine plan. And if we accept that with strength and humility and hope, we can't really go wrong. So, at the center of our reading, we get the Fool. So that's the 0, it's the first card of the major arcana. That is us at the very beginning of a brand new, I don't want to keep saying a brand new cycle. Everything's a brand new cycle, like, at some point. But this is just telling me that well, I'll tell you what happened. When I pulled these cards, originally I started pulling clarifiers from the Botticelli deck, and then I decided that I wasn't going to do that, that I would wait until I was doing it on camera. I didn't know which deck I wanted to use, and I will go with the flow as to what I feel when we get to that part. But the Fool was clarified by the Tower from the Botticelli deck. And I personally had a Tower moment recently, yesterday. And, you know, Tower moments are crises of faith. They are when it's like dominoes falling. It's like one domino falls and then everything that, you know, when you aren't grounded and you don't feel secure in what you're doing, you know, you walk around sort of, you know, you build up a certain amount of stamina and strength and project that to the outside world. But if your foundations are a little shaky, you know, it just takes a little gust of wind and like, and then everything can kind of collapse if we allow it to, because we're not present in that foundational energy that is required. You know, our foundation is a spiritual foundation. It is an energy that we have as a foundation, not bricks and mortar. And if we allow things in the outside world to you know, be the big bad wolf and huff and puff and blow it all away, we're out of alignment on some level. And that's a state of mind, and that's something that things like meditation, yoga, or exercise, or personal time, those things help us to stay in alignment with being in touch with the universal spiritual foundations that are always on offer to us. So, anyway, that Tower moment preceded this energy. So I don't know, that could be anything for you. It could be a moment of self-doubt. It could be something tangible that like knocked you off your feet for a second. It can just be problems. It can be psychological confusion, whatever it is for you. Our energy is coming out of a Tower moment. So we get that Fool, and what's crossing us is the King of Cups, meaning that what caused that Tower and what's causing us to go into this Fool energy and what is on our side moving forward into the Fool newness energy is that we are in the Tower moment tested our ability to own our emotions and to stand strong in the outside world and have the knowledge that even when our foundations get shaken, that we are this energy. We are the King of Cups. We own our experiences. We own the knowledge of our emotional journey, and we go out into the world and we impose that knowledge, not on other people, but we impose it on our path. And that means that, you know, every Tom, Dick, Sally, Harry, cunty, whore, bitch, asshole, you know, arrogant, boastful, moronic person out there that comes along, as they always do, in some shape or form at some moment, you know, those people always lack self-awareness. They have very little self-knowledge because everything about themselves is built in the outside world. And so those people come along and they are, you know, they have an inclination to knock us over without even knowing that they're doing it. Bullies are like that too. They don't have an awareness of what their reasons for bullying are, you know? The King of Cups can encounter any number of those types of people, and he is unfazed. And that's the energy that we're in, that we're moving into. What we're coming out of in our past is Two of Swords energy, which is probably what allowed us to be blown over or knocked off of our axis. That blindfolded sense of not knowing what to do with ourselves. This is a card of self-doubt. This is a card of not feeling that we have the tools or the knowledge to make wise choices. This is finding ourselves faced with choices and feeling diminished by the choices rather than emancipated. We'll definitely take a clarifier on that, but not yet. Our underlying energy is the Seven of Swords. Now, the Seven of Swords is a card of deception for certain circumstances, but it's also a card of boundaries. It's the card of, the way I look at it is, you know, a person that doesn't know how to impose their boundaries, healthy boundaries, you know, which we're all entitled to own and impose on other people, whether they like it or not. When we're not in ownership of this, when we're not in that King of Cups energy, we, rather than confronting people with our boundaries and just owning them, I mean, that doesn't mean in an angry way, it's just like saying, well, you know what, I don't like being pushed, for example. I mean, that's not specific to me, but I mean, I probably don't like being pushed by anyone, but it's not a big trigger to me. But like, let's just take that as an example. I don't like being pushed. Well, I could say to somebody who keeps pushing me, would you mind not pushing me? Because that's very inappropriate and rude. That's a perfectly healthy thing to say to somebody who is disrespecting your boundary. But this Seven of Swords energy is the person that keeps, you know, oh, they're pushing me, so I'm going off camera, but I'm gonna move further away from them and give them more space to push me. Because the reality is the person that's actively and purposefully pushing you isn't going to step away because you're moving back. They're going to take more space. So the Seven of Swords is really when we're deceiving ourselves in that way. And that is our underlying energy. So that is what we've been tested to move away from. And that's uncomfortable for some of us, particularly empaths and people who do have a conscious awareness of not only themselves but other people, and who have a desire to be generous and kind. You know, the empath narcissist dynamic or the rescuer victim dynamic, these imbalances in relationships that usually form really unhealthy relationship cycles in people's lives you know, they are normalized by everything in our corporate capitalist culture. Perfect example, like of celebrating Valentine's Day yesterday. I mean, what a nightmare of a society that we live in at this point. I mean, constant manipulation, you know? I'm not going to speak on couplehood, but, you know, anybody who knows me, and considering how few views I get on this channel, most people that do see these videos do know me. I do have very strong opinions about coupling. I think that it takes an extremely healthy person to have conscious coupling in their lives. I sound like Gwyneth Paltrow. But it is rarely the case that people have done enough work on themselves in order to have a completely healthy relationship with another person. You know, so instead we find ourselves living out dynamics in relationships that trigger parts of ourselves that we have not actively, in self-awareness, confronted and healed. So it's not to say that coupling is not purposeful, it's just that it's a roundabout way of approaching self-improvement. And it can be very difficult when there's another person involved, because you have to consider them all the time and their fucked upness, you know? Anyway, moving on from that, I'm not sure where that was coming from, but I think mainly because Seven of Swords energy is very often like fundamental in a lot of unhealthy relationships. Not speaking up for our needs, and instead making ourselves small in order to accommodate somebody else's needs for fear that we are in Four of Pentacles energy and that we would rather hold on to the little bit of the illusion of love and support from somebody or some source than find ourselves without that, which implies that we don't have enough self-belief to think that we can go out and provide enough for ourselves without, you know, having to fall back on somebody else's not perfect support mechanisms. Anyway, now we're going to move into our upcoming energies, and very nice, we have the Ace of Cups. Now the Ace of Cups is a new opportunity for us to express our healthy emotional selves. It could be anything. I mean, it's not because it's cups that it can't be work. It could be a work opportunity, or it could be an opportunity in our work to show the outside world and to prove to ourselves that we have some kind of infinite flow within us that allows us to navigate things with an ease that we didn't have before. It can also be new relationships entering our lives, romantic friendships, work relationships, mentorships, you know. There's a gift in this newness. It can even be in our pre-existing relationships, that there's just a new, this process that we've just gone through, from the Tower on coming into this contemporary Fool energy, in ownership of our relationships, moving out of that indecision and that feeling of being small and making ourselves small, into a new way of manifesting healthier versions of our relationships in life. Our crowning energy, the Ten of Pentacles. We've had this a lot in recent weeks. This is our legacy card. This is the idea that all of these experiences that we're having, and I do have to say, there's no coincidence that we're going into this Pisces season bit by bit, starting with this Mercury retrograde, and that we have these major cup cards. We're moving out of sword energy and we're moving into cup energy, and the cups are water and the subconscious mind, and those are Piscean, or Cancer, or Scorpio too, but those are the water signs. And so this is actually very promising for this Pisces season that we're coming into. You know, they're not dark energies as they were last year. They were dark energies that we had to work through. Imagine water, you know, you can have pristine, wonderful, Caribbean, clear, you know, tropical waters, and then you can have the abyss of like the Atlantic Ocean or something. It's all murky and cold and dark, and they're the same thing, you know? It's just, how is light reaching them? Right? Yeah. So light is flowing through this emotional energy, so that's really nice for us. So all of this in turn is helping us to, on our path to that ultimate legacy of our lives. In other words, what our life purpose is, what we came here to do, and how whatever it is that we came here to do, at the end of the day, it is always more in alignment with our service to others rather than our service unto ourselves, right? So we have to go through a lot of inner turmoil and then self-healing in order to find our true legacy path. So that's nice to know. Of course, unfortunately, coming out of a Tower moment and being at the very beginning of something, comes with this energy. Nine of Swords. Self-doubt, worry, things keeping us up at night. It's all fear-based. None of it is actually real. These are all projections. Everything that you fear, there is a solution to. Everything that you feel fragile about, there is a resolution on the horizon for that feeling, that circumstance. There are new pathways that open to us if the one that we are on turns out to be a dead end. There is no, until we die in this physical body, and even then it's questionable as to what that means, you know, there's just going to be new paths. So this energy comes from when we go into our contemplative place, and instead of carrying that foundation of universal energy that keeps us afloat and that keeps us understanding that we are we have the power to stay above or to dive deep underwater. The subconscious mind, I mean, when I say that, you know, that we have the choice to be aware and out in the world, or to retract and to spend time going into those places, you know, where there's not light, or as much light, there's bound to be fear, because we don't have the trust in our own abilities to navigate without light. But we do. But inevitably it causes this type of emotion, and it's not just fear, but fear is a big one, but there's, I'm sure in your own world, in your own life, there's other aspects of that, and whatever those fears are, they're just projections. And they're also indications that there's work to be done on something within us. So take it as an opportunity. In our environment, we have the Nine of Cups. So interesting that we have so many cards about our own inner journey, but in our environment we have the card of self-satisfaction, emotional fulfillment of self-knowingness. And so let me think. Okay, I was originally going to say that may mean that we are finding in other people, like in the upcoming week energy, like maybe beyond that, that we are encountering people that have this Nine of Cups energy. But I think actually what it may actually be is that this journey that we've been on, you know, our new fool's journey emotionally, is that in our environment we are now putting ourselves out there with this. You know, this is the King of Cups is the action card of this. It's the knowingness and then going out and owning it. And then the Nine of Cups is really the embodiment of it, if that makes sense. It's more the, you know, when we're in alignment in here emotionally, there's a sense of self-contentment, there's a, you know, we are able to put our best foot forward. In our hopes and fears, we have the Page of Cups. And the Page of Cups, in our hopes and fears, implies that we're waiting for something. We're waiting for, maybe we've been a little bit in poverty consciousness emotionally because of that Tower moment, and because we are at the very beginning of a new cycle, a new karmic cycle emotionally, and in other parts of our lives. And so we're looking, it's that hope of having something given to us. It's a fish in his cup. So he's not picky. No offense to fish, of course, because I had sushi last night, it was delicious. But, you know, it's like, one small thing can indeed push us on a path to build, that will in time build momentum. Like it will snowball into a much bigger entity, a much bigger driving force. But are you thinking too small, maybe? Maybe imagine something other than just a fish in your cup, you know? That's what I'm getting from that. But, and it may also be that what that card is telling us is that in the newness of where we find ourselves in our lives, we may, through self-doubt, be diminishing our own sense of capacity to act. And so we have to pull more out of our subconscious experience. The knowledge is all there. We have to, you know, dig a little deeper, and then, you know, like we've talked about that before, this cycle of like going through, you know, like the conscious experience of life, and then we process that. You know, it can be in, you know, tower moments very often, like, or then what force us from our outside journey back into the subconscious mind, where we have to process all of this information. This is the tree of life. You know, like it's a soul hierarchical growth system, and each time we elevate our consciousness on some level as a result of doing that flow. Like, it's, imagine yourself, you go down deep and then you come out, and each time you come out a little bit higher, and then the next time a little bit higher. So, you know, if you're just going, you know, when you really need to go like this deep into your subconscious mind, but instead you're just going under the surface, like, you know, the deeper you dive, the bigger the rewards, because the bigger the self-awareness, the greater the capacity to work effectively towards the legacy. And we got our outcome, the Sun. The most fantastic card in the deck, I say, as a Leo. Some people like the World, but the World is an ending card. It's fulfillment, but it's an ending. The Sun is where, like, our ships come in. It's like really where it's the card of ultimate blessings. So hang tight. The tricky stuff is going to turn into something way, way bigger for you that's great, beautiful, fulfilling, and energizing. It's just that idea that, like, on the horizon is the opportunity to have that life that you want, where you feel like everything around you is a reflection of the goodness within you. Let's take a couple of clarifiers. I know this is probably going pretty long, but for all 8 of you that watched last week, if you're watching again, I guess you don't really mind the long readings. It's impossible for me to gain more viewers, and that's totally fine. I know that the way that I do this isn't for everyone, because most people would rather have readings where they're told where their next lover is going to be, or whether their friend is being a bitch to them or something like that, and I don't do that. And I also don't do sign-specific readings, which a lot of people don't understand, but the reality is that there are no sign-specific readings. If you watch anybody, any of these readers on YouTube that do 12 videos for 12 different star signs, I can guarantee you that if you watched all 12, at the end of it all, you probably find that their message was the same to every sign, with slight variations, because of course we do have individual personalities, and those personalities in their gross understanding of them can correspond to the individual zodiac sign. But the energies come from the universe. They do not come from the specific constellation of one sign over another. So get that into your heads. Not you, because you're watching this, so you probably understand that, but that's me putting that out to the collective, because it's really limiting. And I do watch certain things specific to my sun and my moon and my rising, more my sun and my rising than my moon, because the moon is emotions, and I know my emotions. I don't really need a lot of help in telling me what I'm feeling. But that said, I like universal readings too, and I have people that I follow who do energy readings for the collective, as I do. So anyway, I'm not sure why I'm telling you all of that, but let's get a clarifier on a couple of these. I'm going to see if any come out, because I really feel like that was actually pretty self-explanatory somehow, but what can we get? Okay, our strength card, underlying energy of the strength card is clarified by the 4 of Wands, so that is building foundations. So it makes sense that here we are at the beginning of the Fool's journey, and we're like building foundations. I don't think I'm gonna get a clarifier on that Ace of Cups, please, because I would like to get a little bit more information on the Ace of Cups and how that opportunity is manifesting itself. Okay, it's 5 of Swords, so our emotional opportunity, positive emotional opportunity that we're going to be coming into is going to vanquish this Five of Swords energy, which is, this is competitiveness. This is the focus on a false victory in my mind. You know, it's like, it's not, the fives are cards that indicate we are out of balance. So this is ending an idea cycle more than anything. This is about ideas being out of balance. So if the Five of Swords is telling us that we are not, that we have been in a place where we have not been in alignment with our ideas, then that gives us an idea of how we come into the Ace of Cups energy. We have to change our outlook. That's really all it comes down to. Do we need a clarifier on the Nine of Swords? Well, I guess we're gonna get one anyway. The Empress. Okay, so the Nine of Swords, that's, the Empress is like, you know, as opposed to the Emperor, the Empress is, you know, she's in her power, but she's also, for me, she's a person who represents the mother, she represents fertility, she represents fulfillment, she represents the feminine side of power. So our worries may be that so we have to focus on not going too much into the patriarchal version of power. That is what's causing us this angst and anxiety, is the idea that we, you know, it's like most of the people that watch my videos are women, so, you know, I don't mean this in necessarily in the linear sense of definition of the sexes, but to speak to that, you know, as women, you know, perhaps the struggle to feel pushed to have to perform as a man traditionally performs in the workplace or in our relationships or whatever. You know, the idea that in order to be successful we have to embody the traits of an alpha male. You know, ironically, in one of my job interviews recently, I was asked about something to do with, I don't know, hierarchy or something that brought that up. And I explained that in my past I've worked for people, but specifically one person, who was very much an alpha male, and I admitted I have no problem whatsoever in stating that I am not an alpha male. I don't take that as being a, you know, diminishing of my self-worth, you know, but I could tell, I mean, everybody laughed in the interview at me saying that, as if it were some type of, you know, aberration and therefore comical for a male to not be wanting to own alpha maledom. And obviously those people were not very evolved, and I can actually, looking back on it now, sort of see that they really weren't. And they didn't give me the job, so I guess that worked out for everyone. Anyway, so remember that there is power, that the feminine version of power, the Empress, she is just as effective and just as important and just as you know, well, everything exists in yin and yang, or Shiva Shakti, or, you know, divine masculine, divine feminine. So if we neglect to give empowerment to the feminine power within us for fear that we are then going to be diminished because we're not embodying the emperor, the male side of that, that's going to cause an imbalance in us, which may be the root of anxiety and fear, just fear-based emotions. Anyway, moving on. I am only going to take another, I'd like a clarifier on the sun if we can get one, and then I'm going to wrap this up because I know this is running very long. What do we have for the sun? What do we get? Interesting. Well, that did come out. So I'm just going to take another to see that. We got the Seven of Pentacles. So the Seven of Pentacles is the contemplation card. It's looking at what we have. Maybe it's considering like what it is that we associate with success and with power, and contemplating those values, or what we have of those values reflected in our own lives, or what we're pursuing in our lives that reflects those values. And coming to the understanding that in order to find our bliss, we have to reevaluate that, because it came out, the Seven of Pentacles came out upside down. So actually, no, it's the end of this. The sun comes, the blessings come, and they correspond to the end of the period of material contemplation. We know what makes us tick. We know what we want. And in turn, the blessings come. We no longer have to look at everything in our lives going like, is this what I want? What do I want? What do I not have? Where, you know, that's going to end. We're going to be coming into a place of satisfaction with what we have. And we got the Ten of Wands too, which is the end of that cycle. It's the end of a cycle of inspiration and ideas in order to open up to a new sense of drive, essentially. And when I say drive, I mean from inside, not a specific like career goal or something. It's the end of a cycle of how we have perceived our linear journey. And now we're coming into a new way of attaining blessings and happiness that is less limited, probably. Definitely. Okay, on that note, I will wrap this up. I wish you a fantastic week. I'm glad that I pushed through and that I did this video. I really was planning on just saying, fuck it, I'm not doing these anymore. But I did. And the guides came through for us, right? I think we got the messages we need. So I send you many, many blessings from this reading and lots of love, and I wish you a fantastic, productive week full of happiness, and I'll see you next time. Namaste.